All right, here we go in three, two, one. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Sports Medicine Broadcast, a podcast to promote and improve your practice as an athletic trainer. For the last couple of years, I've been looking into how I can get a master's or a doctorate. I just have a bachelor's of science, and with the master's, it costs $10,000 to $20,000, and then you look at, is that ever going to pay off? And then if you look at the doctorate, is that an extra $30,000 on top of the $20,000? And so the people at Indiana State, the Doctorate of Athletic Training program, reached out, and so we're kind of working together to answer some of those questions about a Doctorate of Athletic Training, a PhD, and the Masters of Athletic Training. Again, working together of which one fits when and where. So this is the beginning of a 3-part conversation where we talk about the DAT today. We're going to talk about the PhD next week, and then the week after, or whenever it is, we will talk about why choose one versus the other. So it's an interesting conversation as we have Matthew Drescher. He completed his doctorate at Indiana State University and is currently working on his PhD. And so we will cover that, more of that in the second conversation. We're talking about which one to choose and why. So this is sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/DAT. Again, sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/DAT. And I am Jeremy Jackson, host of the Sports Medicine Broadcast. Matthew, thanks for joining me and enlightening me on what it looks like to get the DAT. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Um, so I guess on that note, like what it is a DAT. So I guess physically, the DAT is a post-professional degree program. Um, it's a clinical doctorate, stands for Doctor of Athletic Training. Focused, most of the programs that are currently across the country are focused on clinical education, advanced clinical education, and clinical leadership. But I kind of look at the DAT in a different light. So I tend to look at it as a metaphysical kind of idea of it. It's a mindset. To me, the DAT is a commitment to the profession to be a leader and push forward, promote advanced practice leadership, promote us as a profession, as healthcare providers, and helping lead the profession forward and understanding that that's a hard thing to do, but we can do hard things. And the DAT is a commitment to that mindset to continue doing what's right for the profession and moving it forward.
All right. So obviously the DAT stands for Doctorate of Athletic Training. And so when I was talking to Devin and about the blood flow restriction, there was just
Mm-hmm.
some questions that he had that I didn't think of. This is my 17th year as a professional. I went through a bachelor's program, through the internship program, so I don't even have a formal athletic training education. And so one of the reasons that I am interested in the doctorate is because there was so much stuff that I missed out on. There was so much stuff that wasn't included in my education that I would like to learn or like to think differently about, right? And so again, tell me a little bit more about what I would expect to get out of or learn or take away from the Doctorate of Athletic Training program.
So let's preface this in more of a conversation about post-professional space. The beauty of like this post-professional education and these doctorate programs, there's multiple ones across the country. Um, and the beauty of a post-professional degree is that it can be marketed to the market. So all of the programs hit on the same central tenets, but they all do them in a different way. And when you're thinking about going into this level of education, it's really about aligning that with your values. I can talk about the ISU DAT and what I learned. Part of that was really how to be a clinical leader, what it looks like to be that person, the person who does hard things, the person who asks the hard questions, um, and promoting yourself as a lifelong learner. And that's something that I value immensely. Some other programs focus on different aspects. So I know we focus a lot on manual therapy and advanced manual therapy skills. Some programs focus on more of the leadership aspect and what we call practice-based research. But each program has a little bit of a nuance. And so I would say in general, looking to what you would expect from a DAT program is that mindset, that thinking differently of problems in situations and how to overcome them at a systems level, at a um, micro level, and then at a personal level to promote yourself and the profession. I think the conversation of why one or the other, which we'll talk about in upcoming podcasts, is also based on kind of that value system and what you're valuing. So, for example, Jeremy, you said you have 17 years of experience, and you're running this podcast and putting yourself and promoting yourself out there. So it seems like you already have some of that mindset to keep going, to be better, to push better. And some people have that and some people don't. But if that's something you want to cultivate and to bring up, then I think a DAT is an excellent aspect and an excellent adjunct to being able to do
Yeah, just again, it adds the value. So one of the things that I've always said, that before I leave this school district, which is Pasadena ISD, I want to be part of the change in creating a intermediate athletic trainer, so intermediate school. So here in Pasadena, we have elementary, middle school, intermediate, and then high school. So we have the 4 different levels, buildings, whatever
that.
it is. And so in the 7th and 8th grade, they play sports, but they don't have an athletic trainer. So they'll have football and basketball, volleyball, soccer, all that stuff, but they don't have a single person there to take care of those athletic injuries. One of the reasons I want to possibly pursue the DAT is, again, being able to, I guess, carry more credibility, more influence with saying, hey, Dr. Jackson recommends that we have athletic trainers in all of our intermediate schools, rather than, Jeremy Jackson athletic trainer level. So you talk about making changes at the system level. How do you think that helps me, plays out for me, things like that?
So I think you make a really good point of, I guess you could call it the clout that having that title would bring, right? Saying Dr. Jackson suggests this, but part of that mindset of the DAT is it's not really about the degree. To the outside world, it's an easier concept to understand. You're a doctor versus you're not a doctor. But when you're working with a DAT, the concept is not necessarily the clout, but it's the skill and the knowledge to be able to make the changes, to know the steps to how those changes have to be made, right? You can't just run in and say, put an athletic trainer here, please. It's knowing how to line up all of the blocks to work with you. And that's what I mean more about a systems level change, because at that level, the systems are dynamic and they're complex. So being able to know how to speak that language, to align the blocks, to prove that value and worth, that's something, those are skills that a DAT degree can give you, on top of the confidence and the credibility that the degree itself carries. I would argue that your experience carries a lot, but you are also going to have to explain what that means to someone who's not familiar with athletic training. Whereas the degree on top of your experience and then on top of that, those skills are going to help you carry that out. I look at it more of like a medium to carry the skill versus a be all end all like push.
Yeah, essentially, if I've never learned how to negotiate a deal, then I'm not going to be very good at it. But if I learn, hey, here are the skills to help you change the mindset, to help you look at the system level rather than just trying to push something up the chain, but taking a step back and looking at it from, the administrator level, and about maybe even from the healthcare level, from this. So all the different ways that you can approach that can definitely help you implement the change and continue to grow. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So some of the, again, talking about the ISU DAT, do you know how old it is?
So I believe we're in our 5th cohort.
Okay.
And we're working on the 6th starting in June.
All right. So going on 6 years, where are some of your graduates from the ISU DAT program now?
Um, oh, that's a hard question. They are all over the place. Some of them are working at Division I colleges. One of them is now working at University of Michigan, I believe. A lot of them are working in the industrial setting, um, uh, or in major hospital systems. So at a clinic level, or at a physician's clinic level. So really a lot of our graduates are working across the board, and a lot of our graduates are creating those positions for themselves as well. So part of it is getting them into the spot, but then part of it is the degree itself, talking about making change at the system level, advocating for yourself. They're able to get in there and say, oh, also, you know, I'm an athletic trainer. Athletic trainers deserve more because we are more than what you think we are. And I think for a lot of athletic trainers, when we are looking for jobs, we hit that roadblock of the business is only going to pay us X amount of money, because that's what their higher ups, the people who make that budget, see the value of athletic trainers. So one of the things that our DAT graduates have been able to do is go in and say, actually, we're worth more than this, and here's why. And here's my clinical outcomes. Here's the advanced skill set that we can do as a profession. We are worth more. And they're creating that system for themselves, but they're also setting a precedent for the next athletic trainer after them, or the next one they hire to come in, and the system's already set up to value that position. So they're all over the country as well, but they're also making that change at a local level, and hopefully that's branching out into more of a regional and a systems level.
All right. When I've looked at getting a master's degree from Lamar University online, which is here about an hour and a half away, and almost all of it is online, and it's I would say it's mostly just to have the master's degree, just to have that extra $1,000 a year, whatever it is. Mostly, if I was chasing the master's of education, it was around like $15,000 or $20,000. So if I was to apply for the Doctorate of Athletic Training at ISU, again, different programs, different costs, different things like that. But what would I be looking at financially right now?
So are you meaning like overall cost?
Yeah. So what would it cost me to get my doctorate, my DAT at ISU?
I don't personally, I don't have those numbers, like the exact numbers right now. There's been some differences in the university throughout this year due to COVID and tuitions changing and things like that. But in general, I want to ballpark it, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, but ballpark it around 30 to 35,000, and that might be overzealous, but yeah, I would ballpark it around there.
Okay, that's about what I was thinking. Is around somewhere around $32,000 for getting the doctorate, and so if I was to spend $20,000 to get the master's and then $32,000 to get the doctorate, obviously that wouldn't work out. But one of the interesting things I know about your Doctorate of Athletic Training program there is that if I just have the bachelor's, I can still apply. I can still do the Doctorate of Athletic Training, correct?
Yes.
All right, so tell me a little bit more about that, or how that works out.
So one of the reasons that we are one of the few programs that would accept someone with just a bachelor's. A lot of the DAT programs require a master's degree, but one of the reasons we accept students with either degree is because the DAT in our program is not designed to be the next block on the tower. It's really, we designed the DAT to be a program that enhances you as an athletic trainer. And it's not necessary that you already have a post-professional degree, a master's degree or something like that, to be able to be that athletic trainer for yourself. And we see the value in everyone's experience. So we also saw that it's a big ask to say to someone who wants to get their DAT, okay, yes, but you have to go spend 2 years in a master's program to be eligible. When in reality, we want to give you the mindset and the experience of our DAT program. And so it didn't make sense for us to put that limit on the system when it really wasn't necessary.
I gotcha. And that, again, that would be a huge hurdle for me, is I basically wouldn't do that, because anybody listening to the podcast regularly knows I have 3 biological kids, a foster daughter. They're range from 10 to 1. And so obviously thinking about paying for school for them and those kind of things definitely factors in. You know, we're paying off our house this summer, so we'll be completely debt free. And I want
And
to
congratulations, by the way, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'll be 40 years old and completely debt free, and yeah, that's really exciting. So it'll change the family's financial tree, so the whole family will see the benefit of that as they go down. My kids and everything like that. So we won't ever borrow money again. And then I know a lot of times finding a scholarship for a doctorate program is really difficult. Do you have any idea about what financial aid for a DAT looks like at ISU?
So I don't necessarily know of the scholarship opportunities. I was fortunate enough to be a graduate assistant here, which that itself entails a tuition waiver. I understand that most people aren't in a position to be a graduate assistant. And I am fortunate that I was at the time that I applied and got accepted into the DAT. But there are options out there for scholarships and things of that nature. But it is a lot less abundant in graduate level education than it would be in a typical undergraduate level education. So most students do incur some cost relative to the education, even whether or not they are graduate assistants or they're paying through loans or out of pocket or things like that. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but that's something that our faculty could, one, better answer than I could, and also just reaching out to the school's financial aid system itself and seeing what's available for students who might want to take this route.
Right, for sure. All that's individual based, whether or not you're making $80,000 a year in single, or
Right.
whether you're different race is that, or different whatever it is, different backgrounds that make you more available for other scholarships, different things like that, different funding. Obviously it's individual. And so I know that I've looked and I've asked and talked to people, and they said, well, you can apply for loans. And so I just haven't really found any good source of scholarship for doctoral
Right.
work. So, all right, you keep talking about the mindset. The DAT is a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know Dr. Games talked about that on the podcast back when we were in Las Vegas. Last time we had the live NATA, talking about just the mindset there. So what are some of the really big things that your former students have said, like their praises? What are some of their elevator pitches, some of their, flyer quotes that you put out there, kind of thing like that?
So, shameless plug, if you check out the Indiana State DAT Twitter, which is at ISU Athlete Training, we've been actually doing a post series about former or current alum who are doing this. And it's a post series kind of about the same thing of what the DAT's brought to them. But from at least my cohort, who I was very close with, I know that the biggest praise is the mind, and I keep saying it, the mindset, but the ability to go out and have the agency to make change. So we talked about it a little bit earlier, but a lot of alum are making change in their workplaces that they want to see, instead of accepting the situation for what it is. But it's also an idea of the alum being able to accept circumstances that are out of their control. So making change at a local level and things you can control instead of trying to wrestle the whole system that is ultimately not in your control. So what I found in my own personal life is that agency to be the change is probably the chief praise of the program, and what most of our alum are gathering as they go they continue in their jobs or they start new jobs. That's what the DAT has benefited them to do.
All right. So other than chief praise, what are some of the other good things that they've said, the other positive feedback?
So one of the biggest things that I found, not only when I applied, but going through the program is the connection to the faculty and our adjunct faculty. So we put on a on-campus intensive learning weekend once a semester. And typically we bring in a lot of adjunct faculty, so leaders in the profession, other educators from different schools, and they are able to add to the program and the curriculum. And being able to connect with not only the core faculty, but these adjunct faculty and network at that level is a massive benefit and praise that I would see, that I felt in the program. We've done collaborations with leaders in the profession in research opportunities and talking opportunities and mentorship opportunities. So there's a huge connection aspect to our program that I think is massively beneficial, and it spans the cohort style. It spans the 25 people that you start in the program with. It's the previous cohorts, it's the future cohorts, the faculty, adjunct faculty, and the family that the ISU is, along with, like I said, adjunct faculty, and then their connections and things like that. So that is a huge benefit, and one of the reasons that it drew me to this program versus some of the other DAT programs.
All right, so following along those lines, again, ISU DAT program, most of this information can be found online on their website, but it's all online except for you have 2 summer sessions, like one first year, one second year session,
Mm-hmm.
and those are 1 week, 2 weeks.
So the first year summer session is an 8-week summer session, and I believe the second year is 14 weeks.
No, the in-person intensive.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So the in-person is typically between 3 to 5 days.
3 to 5 days.
Yeah. So typically we try to do it over a weekend. That way it mitigates some of the issues of having to leave work and getting coverage and things like that. But for example, we're coming up on one now, and it's Thursday through Sunday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is the next coming DAT weekend. We call it a weekend, but it's typically 3 to 5 days. So yeah.
Okay. So I don't know, I haven't researched all of the different programs, but again, for me, for a 17-year professional working in the secondary school, it would have to be one that's predominantly online. And so this one would work. And during the summers, we don't have any responsibilities here. So it would be something where, all right, well, I'm going to take my family to Indiana for a week or whatever it is, and I'm going to go to the academic sessions and the learning sessions, and they're going to hang out and do whatever they want. And so the time constraint, do all of your people have to finish in the 2 years? Because you said you're starting a new cohort. Do they have to finish in that 2-year block?
So we expect that they finish in the 2-year block. There have been examples or situations where a student is not able to complete the degree due to financial reasons or health reasons or things of that nature. And so what we've done in the past is we've kind of swung them around and put them into the next cohort so that they're still finishing the progression in the same way, but that they're not taking the courses out of sequence or when they're not being taught or things like that. The way that the cohort style and the sequence of courses are set up is that they are iterative, they build on each other, and they're not necessarily offered every semester all the time. Some programs are offered in that kind of style, that personal learn as you go kind of style. And again, that's based on choosing that versus a cohort based on your value system. It's based on what you are looking for, what's going to fit with your schedule personally. But the way that our program hits the cohort style, we think that it adds that level of community and adds that level of collaboration that allows students to kind of come together as a class, as a cohort, and work together throughout the curriculum.
All right, so Scott Millett was watching live on Facebook, and he asked, what about the EDD, so the Doctorate of Education. Is that something that we better cover next week with the PhD, or is that something you can address here?
Um, I think it will probably be better covered in the PhD conversation. I
Okay.
think when we're talking about post-professional pathways, um, it's all about what you want to get out of it. So if you want to be an advanced practice clinician who has or experience and skills with advanced clinical skills, leadership, practice-based research, I think the DAT is a perfect option for you. Um, if you're looking to go into education, higher education, and that higher level, then the EDD might be the option. The DAT is not designed to teach you how to teach people. So there are aspects of our program that help you be a better clinical educator, preceptor, educator of those clinical skills, but it's not designed to do what an EDD does. So they're different um, degrees, and I think that it would be probably a better conversation for next week when we kind of talk about the PhD and to throw a little bit of that EDD stuff in there.
All right, good. So, kind of following right along there, uh, the DAT, it can't be all roses, can't be all good stuff, right? So there's had to have been some sort of negative feedback you guys have received. So what are some of the things that they said, hey, I wish I'd learned more about this, or I don't feel like it prepared me for this? Maybe you're making changes on those things, but what are some of the things that you guys have seen that have not been so great?
So I think one of the biggest detractors, or detractors is probably the wrong word, but one of the biggest things that we've seen is that students aren't necessarily prepared for the rigor of the program. We haven't ever had a student come out and say, I wasn't prepared for this, or I had wished that we were taught this. The way that we've designed our program is that it is not necessarily a bunch of concrete skills, but it's a bunch of concepts that are applicable to your life. So we focus on teaching students how to be that metacognitive thinker, that now analyst, there's the word I was looking for, an analyst of what's going on around you. And then you have the concepts and the ideas to then develop your own change, to make your own decisions. And the concepts are designed to be global so that you're able to apply them in multiple different situations. So I don't necessarily think that students are coming out saying, wow, I wish I'd learned more about this, or I wish we had taught about this. But what we are saying is that students come into the program and go, whoa, okay, this is difficult. It's supposed to be difficult. When you do difficult things, you train your brain to do difficult things. And so difficult things become easy things. But the program is rigorous on purpose. And when you come out of it, you are a person who can do those things. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing that we've seen, is just that students are not yet, or not always prepared for the level of rigor that we are expecting.
Okay, so I really enjoy that reframing the perspective to figuring out how we can do things. It's actually something that I say to my children, my biological children, is that we can do hard things. And usually it's, in reference to doing the dishes or sweeping the floor, those kind of things, whenever they decide that it's too hard to sweep the floor. But we can do hard things. We can do hard things. Or even soccer practice. Sometimes it's really hard and I don't want to do it. We can do hard things. It's not like, suck it up, you're going to go do this. It's changing. We can do hard things. We can do hard things. I really like that saying. So talk to me just a little bit more about that, maybe where that came from, or some of the ways that you've either seen that play out in your career, or you've helped instill that mindset of we can do hard things.
So this idea of we can do hard things, it's this idea of building resilience. And so the more you do something, the more you learn a skill or you do something, you get better at it. And those hard things become easy. Riding a bike is hard for people until they learn how to ride it. Driving a car is difficult until you learn how to drive. And it's the same concept of putting yourself in the position to build the resilience, so that when you are faced in the next chapter of your life with an obstacle, because you will, Everything can be an obstacle. You're able to look back and say, I've done this before and I won. I did something hard. I can do this again. Um, and it becomes a mindset. It's not just someone behind you pushing you forward. It becomes a way of life of doing those hard things. So the program itself is set up that way. Um, and it's been an iterative process, but we've designed it that way so that when you're out in the real world and you're hit with that face of your school superintendent says, no, we can't do that. You look at it and say, well, I've done hard things and I can keep pushing this. And this is an obstacle that I can overcome. Or you're in a system where you're being, you don't feel like you're having efficacy or you're being stifled or something. And you can look at it and say, this is hard, but I can do this and I can make change here because I've done it before and I've done hard things before. So that's where we build that idea of hard things. It's not necessarily a class. Like we don't have a class that's, hey, this is how you do hard things. It's built into everything you're doing through the program. And when you come out of it, you can look back and say, yeah, I did those things. And yes, I can go forward and do more.
Have you, do you I'm going to ask you just a second to answer in just a second, but have you, give me a real life example of when you personally had to say, wait, I've done hard things before, I can do hard things again, something that you've struggled with. So just talking about Scott Mullet, recently he was on a podcast, we were talking about data collection and making it tell a story. I was looking yesterday at our data because, again, that's not something that I got when I was in my undergraduate studies or my bachelor studies. And over the last, I would say 2 full academic years, because of COVID and whatever it is, has shortened both last year and this year, there was about 5,000 athletic training room logins. And so that doesn't include the things that we're seeing on the field or at the game that we didn't happen to type in. But just taking a look at those and thinking that's a lot of data, that's a lot of information. And, we're looking at maybe changing the way the athletic training room or athletic training facility is set up, and that would require funding from the school board and things like that. And so this ability to do hard things, it would be a lot easier to just sit there and write it out, not change the facility, not improve the athletic training in our district, things like that. So this is definitely a concept that I am seeking. Is I want to be able to do hard things. I want the skills and the talent to do those hard things that make a difference, that leave an impact, that change. And it's not about me being famous or me, having the Pasadena High School Jeremy Jackson Athletic Training Room or something like that. It's, it's not that I want things named after me. It's I want things to be better. I want to be part of that change. So tell me a story about a resiliency or a thing, an obstacle or hurdle you almost couldn't overcome, but you were able to stop and look back on your training from your doctorate program.
So I have a lot of stories about that, but I will focus on, I think, the one that was most impactful for me. And part of that impact was when I decided to get my PhD, and why I decided. And we will jump into this, I think, next week, of the why and the where. But I think when I was in this process, my mind first went to I call it the lazy zone, but that idea of, man, I could just stop right now and then I'm going to be done. And then this is, I got my DAT and this is it. And I could be fine. But when I asked myself the question is, what do I want to do? What do I want from my life? Where do I want to be in 5, 10, 15 years? The answer aligned with the PhD. But it was this constant balance for me of, this is going to be hard to do. This is going to be work. I'm going to have to take more time to do this to get where I want to be, or I could live my life right now and just be content and whatever. And so I was able to take that feeling of, well, I felt this way when I applied for the DAT, but I wanted it. I wanted the mindset. I wanted to be that person, to be better, and I did it. So this is no different. I can do this. I can put in the work. I can put in the hours, and I can put myself in the position to be where I want to be in 5, 10, 15 years. I know it's hard, but I've done this already. It's proof. Like I am physical proof that I've done it and survived and gotten through to the other side. So this looks hard, but I can do it, and it won't be hard. I think that was the most impactful moment. I actually got it tattooed on my arm. It's a SEAL motto, this idea of sinking to your level of training. Right? And everything you do in your life is training for the next time you do that in your life. And so this idea of doing hard things is training for the next time something hard comes up. Okay, I've already done it. Like I said, it was hard to get on a bike and ride the first time and fall off. Next time you get on a bike, you don't fall as often. Fourth, fifth, sixth time you're on a bike, you're riding down the street full speed and nothing can stop you. So every single time you get to the mindset of this is going to be hard, I don't want to do this, and you push through that, you're training your brain again to say, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, instead of living in that world of doubt and world of denial.
All right, so we're going to continue the conversation, again, talking about the PhD, and then kind of comparing and contrast the two over the next 2 weeks. But anything else that you feel like we have left undone about the DAT, or maybe some of the frequently asked questions that we can kind of throw out there to help clear up for people?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I wanted to mention is this idea of value, and the DAT, and we'll come back to it with the PhD and then the conversation about both of them, but the idea of, is this valuable to me? And the problem with that question is no one can answer that question for you. If your values are aligned with being debt-free and not taking out loans, as you've spoken earlier, Jeremy, it's going to be a harder decision to do this, an advanced degree program at all, because they all cost money. But I think the argument there is what is the true value there? So I valued the idea and the mindset of the DAT, and I valued being a better athletic trainer. And I'm not saying that you don't, but the money was worth that value to me. To be honest, you could find a lot of this information on Google. I saw it on an Instagram post that you're doing, Dave Ramsey's, course, curriculum. In theory, you could go on to Google and find a lot of that financial help information. But what you're paying for and what I valued is the curation of the content and the experience of the people teaching it to guide me to being that better person. So in the same instance with the Dave Ramsey stuff, the people who are using that course are paying for his guidance and experience to do hard things, to show them that it is possible. It takes a lot of will and resilience to be able to sit on your couch by yourself and go, you know what, I'm going to spend 3 days on Google collaborating, synthesizing all this information, and then I'm going to make change in my life. If you value that, then that's great. But you could also value the curation and experience. And even though those cost money, the money or the value might be greater than that to some people. To me, it was. I can't make that decision for everybody. I really can't. It's not something that you can just tell someone, you need to do this. And I'm not here to tell people everyone needs to get their DAT. And it's really a personal value-based decision and what you believe for your life. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but you're already a person who is learning and bringing on people, even to this podcast, to ask them questions and to gain more knowledge and gain more information. If you're the type of person that can continue to do that, you might not need to go through the DAT to continue to be a lifelong learner. But if you're someone who, like you said, wants to have the experience of doing that in that mindset and the experience of the faculty and the curation of all that content, then yeah, the DATs might be the right choice for you.
All right, so if you're struggling to make a change or make an impact and you feel like you need an extra push, an extra conversation, sounds like the DAT may be just what you need. Again, weigh it out. I think even in the Facebook post, I have, these are the reasons I talk to my wife. These are the reasons I would do it. These are the reasons I wouldn't do it. And obviously there would be more to add on both sides of that list. And so just take that time as you're listening to this podcast to think, where do I want to be? What questions do I have? And then, hey, get a hold of me, get a hold of Matt, get those questions answered. Don't just assume, because Matt said that people applying to their DAT program still ask, which one should I choose and why?
Mm-hmm.
And so as people are applying, making this decision, hey, I'm going to just jump in there, throw my money in there and see if it fits what I need. Stop and consider, is this what I want? Where do I want to end up? And then go from there. So, Dr. Matthew Drescher from ISU Indiana State, the Doctorate of Athletic Training program. Again, first of our conversations, I hope we can help answer any questions that you have and then connect you with the right people to get those questions answered, get those problems worked out, to really understand why you're going to choose the doctorate, why you're going to choose the PhD, or why you're going to choose to stay where you are. So, Matthew, final thoughts before we get your contact information?
Final thoughts is be true to yourself and know what you want at your core, and that's going to guide you to where you need to be.
Very good. One of the things that I want to be most successful at is loving my wife and raising my children. So if getting my doctorate is going to distract me from doing that, then that's a choice that I'm going to have to make to choose those over the doctorate. If I can do them both well, then that's when I would proceed. So stay true to yourself. Know what your core values are. Fantastic. Best way to get hold of you, Matt?
Best way to get a hold of me, email is mdrescher@sycamores.indstate.edu.
All right.
I'm also on Twitter at Matt_Drescher. And I guess technically you get a hold of me on Instagram. I'm at Dreschem, so it's DRESCHEM, like my last name without the R. But yeah, those are the three best ways to get a hold of me if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or just want to talk about the DAT more and whether or not it fits your lifestyle.
Good. And then the ISU program, you mentioned that at the beginning. It's ISU and it's ATHL training for Twitter. And
Yes.
then I think it's Indiana State DAT on Instagram.
Yes.
And then the website
is indstate.edu/DAT.
Right. And in this day and age, if you can't just Google ISU DAT and find it, then you can just go to the links and that I'll have in sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/DAT. So again, this is sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/DAT. So for Jeremy, Dr. Matthew Drescher, Indiana State University's Doctorate of Athletic Training program, and the continued conversation we're going to have about continuing education, the Sports Medicine Broadcast, that is a wrap. Thanks.